Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Grab Your Notes. This is Jeshna and today we are going to deal about the topic dying declaration, which falls under section 32 subclause 1 of Indian Evidence Act. So let's get started. So guys, as I mentioned earlier, today we are going to discuss about the topic dying declaration, and I have tried to accumulate as much as content and case laws in this video. Hope you will find it helpful. So the statements referred to in clause 1 of section 32 are called dying declaration. Words dying declaration mean a statement, written or oral, of relevant facts made by a person who is dead. Generally, it relates to the cause of death of the declarant. Dying declaration can be proved by the person who records it. A dying declaration is not complete unless full names and addresses of the person involved are given in it. Pardon me guys if I'm pronouncing it wrong. The maxim nemo mortuoris praesimetur mentire is a basis for dying declaration, which means a man will not meet his maker with a lie in his mouth. A dying declaration is called as later mortem. The word later mortem means words said before death. Now let us know the distinction of dying declaration dealt under English law and Indian law. Under English law, a dying declaration is relevant only in criminal cases where the cause of death is in question. But under Indian law, such statements are admissible both in civil and criminal proceedings. These are admissible even if the trial is not for the person's death. Difference number 2. Under English law, the dying declaration is admissible only in a single instance of homicide, that is manslaughter, murder, etc. But in India, cases of suicide are also covered. Difference number 3. Under English law, for a dying declaration to be relevant, it must have been made in expectation of death. A declaration made not appreciation of immediate or impending death would not be admitting. On the other hand, there is not any such requirement in Indian Evidence Act. And this is the last difference, number 4. It is necessary under English law that the deceased should have been completed his statement before dying. But in India, if the deceased has narrated the full story but fails to answer the last formal question, the declaration would be relied upon. Now let us know what are the requirements of dying declaration. According to section 32 subclause 1 itself, statement must be oral or written. But in the case of Emperor versus Abdullah, conduct was held to be relevant as dying declaration. Requirement number 2. Statement must be as to cause of death, circumstances of the transaction which resulted in the death. There is a case called Pakla Narayan Swamy versus Emperor 1939. This is an important case dealt under dying declaration. We'll be dealing the most important cases in detail at the end of the video. To make it short, in this case, the statement made by the deceased to his wife that he was going to the accused to collect money from him, accused being indebted to the deceased, was held to be admissible under section 32 subclause 1. There is another case called K. Ramachandra Reddy versus Public Prosecution 1976. In this case, when an injured person lodged the FIR and then he died, it was held to be relevant as dying declaration. That is, in this case, FIR was declared as dying declaration. Requirement number 3. Death of the person is must while making the statement. If death is not the result, his statement will be inadmissible as dying declaration. But it might be relied on under section 157 to corroborate his testimony or to contradict him under section 145. It can be used to corroborate the evidence in court under Section 6 and Section 8. Requirement number 4. Cause of death of the deceased must be in question. Number 5. Expectancy of death is not necessary. And the last requirement, whatever may be the nature of the proceedings, it may be civil or criminal nature where the death of the person deceased is in question. In the case of Sant Gopal vs. State of UP 1995, it was held that evidence of dying declaration is admissible not only against the person actually causing the death but also against other persons participating in causing death. Now let us discuss the language of dying declaration. Dying declaration recorded in the language of the declarant acquires added strength and reliability. As far as possible, it should be recorded in exact words and in the language of the declarant. Now let us know who can record a dying declaration. A dying declaration can be recorded by a person, even by a police officer. But if it is recorded by a judicial magistrate, it will have more strength and reliability. In the case of Ram Singh vs. Delhi Administration 1995, it was held by Delhi High Court that a clear and corroborated dying declaration cannot be rejected just only because it was recorded by a police officer. There was another case called Bhora Singh vs. State of UP 1992. It was a case of dowry death. It was held in this case that dying declaration could not be rejected merely on the ground that it was made to the relatives of the deceased. Now let us discuss the form of dying declaration. It may be in the form of questions and answers or description generally, but not always necessarily. Because there was a case called Rabi Chandra Pradhan vs. State of Odisha 1980. In this case, it was held that the mere fact that a dying declaration is not in the form of question and answer does not destroy its value. Now let us discuss the topic fitness of declarant. A certificate from doctor and endorsement from him that the victim was not only conscious but also in a fit condition to make a statement is must. In the absence of such a certificate, the declaration may be rendered heavily suspect. In the case of Amar Singh vs. State of MP 1996, it was held by MP High Court that without proof of mental or physical fitness, the dying declaration was not reliable. Now let us discuss what is the proof of dying declaration. A dying declaration may be written or oral. It may be proved by the evidence of the witness who had made it. When a dying declaration is recorded by a magistrate, it must be proved by calling the magistrate as a witness. In the case of State of Assam vs. M. Ahmed, it was held that a dying declaration is not a proof of the truth of its contents but only of the facts stated. If it is truthful, it can be the sole basis of conviction. But when it is not properly proved, it cannot be used to corroborate other evidence. Now let us discuss the topic admissibility of statements. There are certain prerequisites to the admissibility of a statement under this section. The court has to be convinced that the witness whose statement is offered is dead or cannot be found or become incapable of giving evidence or any unreasonable delay or expenses involved in producing him. Now let us discuss what happens when there are more than one dying declaration. When there are more than one dying declaration of the same person, they have to be read as one and the same statement for proper appreciation of the value. If they differ from each other on material aspects, the effort should be made to see if they could be reconciled. If no assumption could explain the difference, the statement might become unworthy of credit. But if one is possible, the position may be different. There was a case called Harbans Lal versus State of Haryana 1993. It was a case of bride burning. In this case, 2 dying declarations were produced. Only one was duly recorded by a doctor stating that she was burned by her mother-in-law and husband. The other was recorded by some person attested by the Sarpanch stating that she had committed suicide. The latter, that is the second one, was not proved by competent witness. Therefore, it was held that the latter could not be relied upon. Now let us know what happens if the declarant has chances to live. If the dying declarant does not die, his declaration cannot be used under section 32 subclause 1 as dying declaration. In the case of Appabhai versus State of Gujarat 1988, it was held that if person making dying declaration has chances to live, his statement is inadmissible as dying declaration under section 32 subclause 1. But it might be relied upon under the provisions of section 157 to corroborate testimony when examined. The following are the consequences if the declarant does not die. Number 1. A dying declaration under section 32 subclause 1 is admissible only when the death of the declarant is proved. If the declarant survives, his declaration is inadmissible under section 32 subclause 1. He should be examined in court and the adverse party must be given a chance to cross-examine him. His testimony should be used for corroboration under section 157. It can be contradicted under section 145 by the adverse party. It will be used as the previous statement of the declarant. It may be relevant under any other sections of the Indian Evidence Act 1872. Now let us discuss the topic admissibility of dying declaration. The Supreme Court has laid down in several judgments the principles governing dying declaration which can be summed as under. Number 1. There is neither rule of law nor of prudence that the dying declaration cannot be acted upon without corroboration. Number 2. If the court is satisfied that the dying declaration is true and voluntary, the conviction can be based on it without corroboration. Number 3. The court has to scrutinize the dying declaration carefully and must ensure that the declaration is not the result of tutoring, prompting or imagination. The deceased had opportunity to observe and identify the assailant and was in a fit state to make the declaration. Number 4. Where dying declaration is suspicious, it should not be acted upon without corroborative evidence. Number 5. Where deceased was unconscious and could never make any dying declaration, the evidence with regard to it is to be rejected. Number 6. A dying declaration which suffers from infirmity cannot form the basis of conviction. Number 7. Merely because a dying declaration does not contain the details as to the occurrence, it is not to be rejected. Number 8. Normally, the court, in order to satisfy whether the deceased was in a fit mental condition to make the dying declaration, took up to medical opinion. But where the eyewitness has said that the deceased was in a fit and conscious state to make the dying declaration, the medical opinion cannot prevail. Number 9. Where the prosecution version differs from the version as given in the dying declaration, the said decision cannot be acted upon. Now we are going to discuss the most important few landmark cases which is dealt under dying declaration. Let's get into the first one, that is Pakla Narayan Swamy versus King Emperor. In this case, the appellant was charged with the offence of murder. The body of the deceased which was cut was recovered from a trunk in a railway compartment on March 23, 1937. One of the items of evidence against him adduced by the prosecution was a statement by the deceased to his wife on March 20, 1937 that he received a letter asking him to go to the house of the accused for receiving money due to him and that he was so going. On the question of its admissibility in evidence, the Privy Council observed, the statement was rightly admitted under Section 32, Subclause 1 of the Indian Evidence Act. For admissibility under the section, the statement may be before the cause of death has arisen or before the deceased has any reason to anticipate being killed. The circumstances must be the circumstances of the transaction. General expressions indicating fear or suspicion, whether of a particular individual or otherwise, and not directly related to the occasion of the death will not be admissible. But statements made by the deceased that he was proceeding to the spot where he was in fact killed, or as to his reason for so proceeding, or that he was going to meet a particular person, or that he had been invited by such person to meet him, would each of them be the circumstances of the transaction, and would be whether the person was unknown or was not the person accused. Such a statement might indeed be exculpatory of the person accused. In the present case, the cause of the deceased's death comes into question. The transaction in which the deceased was murdered on March 21st or March 22nd, and his body was found on the trunk, proved to be bought on the behalf of the accused. The statement made by the deceased on March 20th or 21st that he was setting out to the place where the accused lived and to meet a person, the wife of the accused who lived in the accused house, appears clearly to be a statement as to some of the circumstances of the transaction which resulted in his death. Let's get into our next case law, that is R versus Bedingfield. In this case, on the trial of murder, it appeared that the deceased with her throat cut came suddenly out of a room in which she had left the prisoner, and she said immediately after coming out of the room and shortly before she died, "See what Harry had done to me." And in this case, it was held that her statement was not admissible in evidence or as dying declaration, as it did not appear that she was in the fear of death or as res gestae, as it was made after the transaction was complete. There is another case called Queen Empress versus Abdullah. In this case, the accused was charged with the murder of a prostitute by cutting her throat with a razor. When she was taken to the police station and shortly before her death, she was questioned by various persons as to the circumstances in which the injury has been inflicted on her. But she was unable to speak. She was, however, conscious and able to make signs. Evidence was offered by the prosecution to prove the questions put to her and the signs she made in answer. Objections was taken on the behalf of the accused that under Section 32, only written or verbal statements made by the deceased as to the cause of his or her death were admissible, and signs were not verbal within the meaning of the section. It was held that the questions and signs taken together might be regarded as verbal statements made by a person as to the cause of death within the meaning of Section 32 of the Indian Evidence Act, and therefore it was held as admissible. And that's all, guys. Let's continue in the next video. Happy learning, guys!